This is your reminder that the BBC has yet to address the consistent transphobic leanings in its news coverage, and while the team behind Doctor Who is not connected to this in any way since this is a BBC-owned property, I'm going to keep pointing it out until the problem gets resolved. Links in a pinned comment below if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll stop saying it when it stops being a problem.
So, last year, during a certain reveal, this was my reaction.
God damn it, you got me!
And as for this year...
God damn it, Russell.
And would you believe that's the least of the problems with this episode? Hey folks, the Interstellar Song Contest. I can't help but laugh because going into this, before I'd seen any of it, I knew that this was clearly meant to be an interstellar parallel to the Eurovision Song Contest. And there is a fair amount of controversy going on with the Eurovision Song Contest at the moment. And I don't watch the Eurovision Song Contest. I never have. I don't really know all that much about it. So my intention before I saw the episode was to come in at the start and say, look, I know there is a lot of controversy and certain political angles with the Eurovision Song Contest that people have a lot of feelings on. I'm not going to touch on any of that. We're just going to talk about this episode. And then I watched the episode and there's no way that I can't deal with that stuff. Like, this is a case, regardless of whether or not you think the politics are handled well, spoiler, they're not, but we'll get there. This is absolutely a case where to not touch the politics of it, the very clear politics of it, is to review it disingenuously. Anyone who pretends that this can be addressed apolitically is committing critical malpractice, as far as I am concerned. So we've got a lot to try and unpack with this. But since I'm going to be spending the vast majority of my time citing problems, why don't we start on a positive note? Because, yeah, there are some things about this that are good. It is visually a very good episode. There's one shot in particular with the people just kind of floating up out of the arena seats. It was a chilling shot, to be honest. And if the Doctor himself had not been among them, I would have said that might be one of the darkest shots in Doctor Who history. The Doctor, having been sucked up as well, meant that, like, okay, well, there's no way that this doesn't get reversed and undone. But as a shot, that was, that was real effective. Props to Belinda. Well, actually, here's a compliment that I'm going to couch in a criticism. I am so frustrated at how little time we actually see Belinda with the Doctor. I am still frustrated at how little that relationship is actually being developed and built. And it especially kind of hurts this episode because part of what goes on would play a lot better if they actually knew each other worth a dang. That having been said, she plays and sells the realization that the Doctor is gone and she has no way to get back really well. That is a lot of big emotions to sell and make land correctly. And I think she honestly really nailed that. So that was a really great bit from her. The characters of Mike and Greg. Hold up, before you write that comment, I know it's not Greg, it's Gary. I don't know why in my head I thought it was Greg. I'm pretty sure I say it wrong throughout this entire video. You don't have to tell me, I already know, and I hang my head in shame. Initially, I found them a little bit irritating. I'm like, oh, okay, here's the bickering gay couple, yay. But honestly, the more that we saw them, the more I really grew to like them. And they felt like they had a very fully formed relationship that these two performers really understood these people. Like watching them each get, what we've seen them early on get frustrated with each other, but watching each of them get kind of proud of the other, especially when Greg sees Mike, helping the Doctor and being a nurse. And Greg has this moment of, I've never seen you on the job. And then Mike has the perfect response to that being, people who see me on the job are in bad shape. I'm glad you haven't seen me on the job. But there's still this wonderful, very sincere and kind of touching bonding moment between them. And that holds all the way through. The more I saw them, the more I like them. They're actually a really solid addition to the cast. And they give a really nice sense of sincerity to a lot of the moments and scenes that they're in. Another fun thing that I didn't expect to like, the Graham Norton cameo. Like, appearances of celebrities as themselves in Doctor Who is not something I'm especially fond of. Like the Davina McCall thing in Church on Ruby Road was fine and it made sense. But the Graham Norton thing actually landed pretty well. Way better than the what's his name? Rylan? I don't know Eurovision, so I didn't know who this guy was, this host of this thing. And it didn't even occur to me that he was an actual, real life celebrity until he started to have Belinda squeeing over him. And that's when I realized, oh, he must be a real life celebrity because otherwise this makes no sense. So like that, I didn't care. But Norton oddly landed pretty well for me. And it's not like he's an amazing actor or anything. Actually, you could argue his performance isn't that great, but I'd actually say that kind of works. Like, he does a good job of selling this approximation of him and his persona, especially like when he gets more serious when delivering the news about Earth. And it's like almost a really harsh and slightly awkward emotional turn for him, but like, it's not actually him. It's an AI trying to pretend to be him. So yeah, that awkward shift kind of enhanced that in a weird way. I'll also say that in the broad spectrum, if you don't stop and think about the political implications of it, this is a fun romp. It bears a lot of similarities to Kerblam in that way. Kerblam was a episode from the Whittaker era that was a fun romp, as long as you didn't think about it and what it was actually saying. Whether or not it was what it meant to say, who knows? That's about it for positives. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a lot of good things to say about this episode. Before we start to really dig into this, there's a couple of things I want to lay out. There is no way to engage honestly with the politics of this without addressing the politics of Israel and Palestine. Because that situation has been at the center of controversy for Eurovision for a couple of years now, and this episode seems very aware of that. This is a topic that, broadly speaking, I have kind of avoided on the channel. And it's not because I don't have a position. I do. What is happening to Palestine, the people in the Gaza Strip especially, is absolutely indefensible. And the fact that it is not only continuing to happen, but that countries like the US and the UK are continuing to supply weapons that they know for a fact are going to be used in ways that have, do, and will continue to kill children on a regular basis is an atrocity and absolutely deplorable. While I have not addressed this particular political issue on this channel before, my positions and thoughts on this have not been a secret. I have participated in multiple fundraising events for charities to support particularly the children of Palestine. I've done it repeatedly in the past, and I probably will continue to do so in the future. So that's where I'm at. And while I am absolutely going to be tearing at the way that this depicts its elements and the very uncomfortable implications of that, what I'm not going to do is make any absolute assumptions about the creatives involved. Those primarily being writer Juno Dawson and showrunner Russell T Davies. What they believe or think or support or don't support, for my purposes, is irrelevant. And I have no intention of trying to psychoanalyze or assume or presume or project onto them certain political or moral beliefs. And I would greatly appreciate it if you would not do so either. We can absolutely take our critical lens to this work without having it to become an attack on the people who made it, especially because you will rarely ever be able to parse what degree of a bad political take worked into a piece of fiction like this is due to maliciousness and is due to ignorance, or a mix of the two. You will never know in most cases. And finally, while I have made my position on Palestine pretty clear, at least I frickin' hope so, I will not tolerate any anti-Semitism in the comments. That means flat out or dog whistles. If I see it, you will be gone. I will not be dealing with that, any of it. And that is the precise reason why this is a topic that I have not broached in the past. It is just going to be swarmed in the worst way in the comments. And I'm the one who has to moderate that. And I hate doing it. Now, all that having been said, if you are not familiar with what is going on there, I am not going to give you a full breakdown because I have neither the time nor the spoons to do the topic justice. If you want the crash course version, John Oliver on Last Week Tonight has done a couple of videos that I think are very approachable for people who do not already have a basis of understanding of the history and current events going on in that region. If you want deeper dives, there are definitely plenty out there, some right here on YouTube, so you can find those if you want them. And finally, if you're wondering how this ties into Eurovision specifically, there are a number of short videos that have been made by Verily Bitchley, who has been calling for a boycott of Eurovision. Whether or not you feel a boycott is necessary, she does do a very good, very succinct job of summarizing why she has taken that position and making it clear the reasons why she has that. Now, while I will not be making any presumptions about the political stances of either Dawson or Davies, I am going to note one thing because I did check this. I was wondering when this script was written, when this episode was worked on, because it was known that Davies was working on these scripts and helping to plan them out and writing the ones that he was actually writing before the first episode even aired. So there was a possibility that this script was written prior to October 7th, 2023, which was the date when the Palestinian group Hamas launched an attack on Israel, and that attack has been used as a justification for virtually everything that Israel has done since. And there was the possibility that this script was written before any of that happened. However, it wasn't. While a number of scripts were written well ahead of that, it does appear from some things that Davis said to Doctor Who magazine that this particular episode, episode 6, it wasn't named because it didn't have a title yet, or at least not an announced one, was still being worked on into early 2024. So after October 7th and the beginning of its aftermath had occurred. I make this point just to illustrate that this was not a situation that the creators of Doctor Who fell into by accident because they were already working on the episode. Yes, the script likely was going through drafts before October 7th happened, but it wasn't finalized until some months after. At my most generous, the script probably was finalized before Eurovision started that year and before the controversy around Israel's participation really started ramping up. And maybe they thought that this kind of thing would settle down by the time Eurovision was starting back up again. But given what goes on in this episode, I find that to be unlikely. And again, I bring none of this up to imply what the political stances of anybody involved are, but simply to point out that to say that they had no intention to make a political statement feels very disingenuous. I think they were aware of the politics and were trying to say something, but regardless of what they were trying to say, we're going to deal with what they actually said. So with all of that groundwork laid, why did I hate this? It's very clear that Helia and the Hellions are meant to be a parallel to Palestine and the Palestinian people. And to be clear, the show does not fully villainize them collectively, because obviously we have the establishment of what happened to their homeworld, what was done to them and their people, and also made very clear through a number of instances that they are looked down upon, distrusted, and just not treated very well by the rest of the galaxy or universe, or however far the reach of this thing is. So far, fair enough. Then we get to Kid, our villain. Now, Kid is the quintessential example of the person who is taking their fight too far. This is becoming such a massive problem in recent storytelling. It's been noted in the MCU more than a fair bit. I would say Falcon and the Winter Soldier and its depiction of the Flag Smashers was a particularly egregious example of that. But to stick within Doctor Who, I'll bring up Kerblam again. You had the apparent and ostensible critique of capitalism and of this Amazon-like corporation, but ultimately the bad guy was Charlie, the person trying to take down the corporation. And Charlie was the bad guy because he was taking things too far. Now, let's be clear. While it is important to fight oppressive systems, be they corporations or be they nations, there are improper ways to do it. Where the line on that is, I'm not even going to try and begin to draw. But there are degrees of taking things that, like, that is not only unhelpful, that is actively harmful, that is vindictive, that is cruel. That can happen in real life, and it's not unfair to have it be in fiction. However, whenever it happens in fiction, it is scaled way out of proportion, because look at what Kid is trying to do. Kid is trying to kill the entire viewing audience of this. The thing is, though, that kind of poisons the well to an actual critique that is being made. I mentioned Verily Bitchley. She is calling for a boycott of Eurovision because of Israel's placement within Eurovision being used to legitimize them on the world stage and therefore legitimize what it is that they are doing. And she feels that anyone who is choosing to watch Eurovision is, to a degree, complicit in it. And instead of engaging with a criticism like that, you have somebody like Kid go to kill all the viewing audience, and you poison the well of that criticism because you are comparing, whether you intend to or not, you are comparing the idea that the viewing audience is in any way complicit with, well, I guess you just want them to die then, because that's what the villain wants. Again, it is taking it to such an absolute extreme that when this tries to do a little bit of both sidesing, the two sides are wildly out of proportion. Because on the one side, we have Kid, who wants to kill trillions of people. And on the other side, we have a singer who basically, through a performance, a very heartfelt performance that I'm sure she means with all of her heart and soul, but basically asks nicely for her people to stop being oppressed and for people to help. And I'm not saying that a move like that has no value. Making use of a platform like that absolutely does. But when you show it in a zero-sum fashion where the only options presented are either mass murder or desperate plea, and you validate the latter with absolutely no sense of middle ground or that there are many ways and layers to resistance, it creates a false dichotomy where the only options are you either do no violent resistance whatsoever and you ask nicely for help, or you try and kill everybody. By presenting those as the only two options, where it is obvious that this one, where everybody dies, is so out of proportion you can never go with that, then by default, the only acceptable answer becomes no violent resistance whatsoever, regardless of what is being done to you. You should have just been asking nicely. You should have just sung a pretty song, and maybe you would have gotten help. That is really gross. This extreme version of violent resistance, being the only version of violent resistance shown, poisons the well at the idea that anything more than just going, please stop oppressing us, please come and help us, is an unacceptable thing to do. And that is, it's gross. It's the word that I keep saying, but it's gross. That is a really gross position to take. And even if you think I'm 100% wrong with my reading this as being analogous to Israel-Palestine, it doesn't matter. Portraying any oppressed group with this kind of dichotomy that points to a conclusion with no acceptable level of violent resistance and opts instead to valorize the least disruptive way of trying to get help possible is just a gross point to make, no matter who it's about, or whether it's fictional, real, or analogous. And please don't try and tell me that Wynn Kid's cohort is in any way representative of the middle ground because she shows some hesitation at what they're doing. She never makes a case for doing less, and it is still presented as being on either one side or the other, the two extremes and nothing else. And especially in the wake of the second season of Andor having finished up and seeing, while not 100% perfect, but overall how well that show through its 2 seasons handled the balance of what is necessary to fight oppression and to fight the systems that are crushing people. To see how well that did it and grappled with violence, even in cases where sometimes some characters, maybe took it too far, but never fully condemning it as an option when things are this bad. To see it done so well here and then to come and have to watch this, it infuriated me. And if you want a brilliant example of actually balancing questions like this, check out Babylon 5. The character of Jakar is someone who will turn to violence when he feels it is necessary to help free his people, but he's also someone who will try and hold back those around him who are on his side when he feels that they are acting in a way that is going to hurt them later or strictly out of revenge. This is not an either one extreme or the other scenario. My friend Jessie Gender did a really good summation of this recently on her main channel after she and I did a complete watch through of Babylon 5 for a podcast. So it's not impossible to balance these issues, although you'll note the good examples I can come up with do it over multiple seasons, and the bad ones try and cram it into a single episode. So maybe some situations and ideas are just too complicated to be condensed to 40 minutes. And it doesn't help that their supposed analog or potential analog to Israel, the Poppy Honey Corporation, is just that. It's a corporation. It's not a nation. And it's also not a participant in the event. And so its relationship to the event is not the same as Israel's is to actual Eurovision, further muddying the comparison. So to whatever degree Poppy Honey is a stand-in for something like Israel, at least specifically in regards to what Israel is doing in a place like Gaza, it's got this little bit of extra distance massaged in, thereby weakening whatever layer of criticism that might possibly have had. Jumping in from the edit, the corporation being responsible might actually not be as cowardly as I initially assumed, or it might accidentally just be clever by coincidence. I don't know. But I found out during the edit that Eurovision since 2019 has been primarily sponsored by Moroccan Oil, which despite the name is not based out of Morocco. It is an Israeli-based company, and they have been the primary sponsor of Eurovision for 6 years. So there may actually be more validity to the Poppy Honey Corporation in universe than I gave it credit for. Although I'll point out the episode also doesn't tie this company in any way to a government body, which would still be kind of ducking out on the actual reality of what's going on, just to a lesser degree than I first thought. And then, even beyond the allegorical nightmare at the heart of this, there's the depiction of the Doctor, who is cruel in this. Boy, am I not comfortable with that. Look, I'm not saying the Doctor can't be angry. The Doctor can be angry. We've seen the Doctor get angry. But this is more than just anger. He even says flat out, "You put ice in my heart." There's a coldness to him. And especially when he starts torturing Kid. And he tells him to his face, "I will kill you and watch you die." And while he does stop when Belinda shows up and he seems to have some sense of shame, that is insufficient for how dark he went with this. You can compare it to something like Dalek back in Series 1 with Christopher Eccleston. Yes, he tried to torture and kill that Dalek, but that Dalek even pointed out to him,
"You would make a good Dalek."
And that chills him, and Rose confronts him very directly at the end of the episode. Within the same episode, it is made very plain this was wrong. And it is brought up at repeated multiple points across that episode. It's not just the companion making some offhanded comment, "Oh, this isn't right," and the Doctor looking basically embarrassed. It is possible that this might get properly addressed in the next 2 episodes. I'm not going to hold my breath, though, because if this is just here as like, ooh, might he go dark? No. If he is going in a direction that is not okay for him to go in, you better do something with that, and you better do it fast. The Doctor can overstep. The Doctor can do the wrong thing. We've seen that happen. The Time Lord Victorious is kind of a classic example, but I'm not going to compare it to that one because the Doctor isn't cruel there. He is arrogant and he is pompous, and he is wrong, but he's not cruel. The Doctor, as a rule, isn't cruel. I'm going to remind you of my favorite Doctor Who quote. It's not even from an episode. It's from a Big Finish story called The Holy Terror. And that quote is, "It doesn't matter to whom the cruelty is directed. The cruelty itself is wrong." And my favorite Doctor ever, the 12th Doctor, during his build-up to regeneration, said,
"Never be cruel, never be cowardly."
And he's being cruel here. And again, if you want to push him to the edge out of anger, you can do that. Again, to cite the 12th Doctor in Series 9, when Clara's about to die at the hands of the Raven, Peter Capaldi's Doctor gets very angry and very scary.
The Doctor is no longer here. You are stuck with me.
And he certainly threatens cruelty, but he doesn't do it. This Doctor does. He tortures this man. I'm not comfortable with this. And I'm withholding 100% full judgment in the vain hope that this gets properly addressed in the next episode or the finale as to how not okay this was. Because if it's not, the little tiny thing from Belinda in this episode is not enough to cover for what he did here. It's not okay. Not for this character, and not for the heart of him. The heart of him that I love.
I do what I do because it's right. Because it's decent. And above all, it's kind.
And before anybody tries to gotcha me with what the Doctor did to the family of blood, I'm going to point out two things. The first is that this was the 10th Doctor coming off of the pain of the 9th Doctor. He was still on an overall journey of getting better. The pure affirmations of the Doctor's kindness have been solidified since then. But the other thing, if I'm being completely honest, if I saw that episode now, I would also be uncomfortable with that. I'm comfortable with it because I have the long-term view of the fact that the 10th Doctor gets confronted about this down the line with episodes like The Runaway Bride and how scary Donna finds him with what happens with the Rachnos. This gets confronted with the 10th Doctor specifically, and I'm going to need that to happen here. If you are going to show me a Doctor who is this capable of abandoning kindness to the point of calculated, planned, deliberate, premeditated torture of somebody else, then you are showing me a Doctor I do not want. Again, I'm withholding full judgment on this in the hope that this gets addressed. But right now, that's character breaking, which is a phrase I don't think I've ever said about the Doctor. There have been ways of playing and depicting and writing the Doctor that I don't like because it's not my preference. This is the first thing that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, where I am actively disagreeing and saying, no, that is wrong. He even ignored flashes of his granddaughter telling him to stop, which I suppose is the one other good thing that I forgot to mention. I've been skeptical about the idea of bringing back Susan for a very long time, because from a strictly narrative perspective, from a storytelling perspective only, in my mind, the only reason to bring back Susan is to literally end the show. Because in my mind, the perfect ending for Doctor Who as a franchise is the Doctor returning to Susan, because he told her, one day I will come back. So one day he should go back and he should stay. And he's done traveling, he's done adventuring, and that's his happy ending. That's my own writing instincts and what I feel would be a very satisfying use of her. But that's strictly narratively speaking. Logistically, Carol Ann Ford is still alive, but will not be forever. And she has been willing to come back. And it would be a very large missed opportunity to not do something with her while she is still with us. So while my storytelling instinct is to say, don't do this, I do appreciate the reason to do it. And I do think the little glimpses we get here work. And like her kind of acting in the moment as his conscience, or at least that's what appears to be the case. We'll see what else happens with that later on. But for right now, yeah, no, that landed pretty well. And then, oh God, damn it. The Ronnie! You know what? I wanted to end on this one because after dealing with all the heaviness of the bulk of this episode, let's do something cathartic and just rant about this. All right. Let's start with just the Ronnie? Really? This truly, legitimately just feels like Russell is trolling the fan base because it's practically a meme in Doctor Who fandom that whenever any vaguely mysterious woman character shows up, that the fandom, or at least a portion of it, always goes, "Ooh, I bet you it's the Ronnie!" And it's never the Ronnie. That has become the new mantra. It's never the Ronnie. And I feel like Davies decided like, oh, this one time it will be. But okay, first of all, are you trying to appeal to new people or not? Because if you don't know who she is, and there's a good chance you don't, she appeared in 2 stories back in the classic era, neither of which was very good. First, she was in The Mark of the Ronnie, and then Time in the Ronnie. Neither was particularly good. There was a certain camp enjoyment to be had in the performance by the late Kate O'Mara and how she played the part, but like, it was not a particularly memorable character. It was a blatant attempt to replace the Master, who was a character who was kind of being overused and people were not that intimidated by anymore, but it didn't work because they put her in crap stories. But she's a known name if you know classic, and so people have been waiting for her to show up forever. But the thing is, even with Sutek last season, you gave some context for why the audience should care, even if they don't know who that is, because you put him in the context of the toy maker and of Maestro and the idea of these gods, and you identify him as the god of death. So even if people don't know the name Sutek, you still gave some context for what he's going to be for this story. What context have you given for the Ronnie other than saying she's a time lady? That is nothing! And even if we get a great story out of her presence, which we might, but even if we do, and even if I set aside whether or not I think the Ronnie is a character worth bringing back, she had some potential, why not? For the record, she's basically kind of a cold scientist style villain, like wants to do her experiments and her research and doesn't care who gets hurt or what it gets destroyed along the way. Amoral scientist is the basic premise for her. We'll see if they even stick to that. But the thing is, setting all that aside, regardless of who it was who you revealed, this is the worst handled villain reveal in the history of Doctor Who. This was so bad. There was no proper buildup into selling why this matters, or even giving the slightest hint of who she is. You want a masterclass in bringing back a classic era villain as a twist and having it land, even if people don't know who that is. Go back to Series 3 from Davies himself and see Utopia and see the reveal of the Master, which has the full weight, even if you've never seen the Master before. And even more recent instances like Sutek, which I already talked about, or the Master's reveal in Spyfall during the Jodie Whittaker era. Did I love everything done with the Master in that era? Not really, but that reveal still hit pretty dang hard. And because at the moment of the reveal, he was immediately face to face with the Doctor, we got to see how it impacted her. So that was able to sell that he was dangerous, even if you didn't know who the Master was. The performances in the moment sold that, oh, this is bad news. This is nothing. And you have to bring back bi-generation as part of it? What? Okay, look, I'm a defender of bi-generation. I did an entire video defending that, and I know there's a lot of people who don't like it. But one of the things I have said since the very beginning, I liked this, and I never want to see it again. And here it frickin' is. I suspect the way that they'll justify it is it was her hand that like picked up the friggin' tooth left behind by the toy maker or whatever, and that's the way that, because like the bi-generation was supposed to be something that was not supposed to happen ever, and the fact that it happened to the Doctor was supposed to have been a fluke because of the residual reality bending powers of the toy maker, and now you're just doing it again. And like, what the hell was with Mrs. Flood immediately being subservient to this new version of the Ronnie?
Yeah, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am.
What the hell does that imply about the David Tennant doctor that's trying to relax and go through therapy in the garden? And look, I know that a line like this,
Although she's become a Ronnie, while I'm the Ronnie.
is just a callback to earlier stuff and a setup so she can go,
Definite article, so to speak.
but intended or not, it does imply that the 14th Doctor is somehow lesser. I suspect unintended, but did they not think through any of the implications of anything in this episode? Like, why is she like that? Is it supposed to be cute? Is it supposed to be funny? It's not. And maybe this actress will be good. I don't know her. I checked her IMDb. She's been in a couple shows that I've seen, but I don't remember her appearances in them. So I know nothing about her. Maybe she'll be great. Maybe the story the Ronnie will be used to tell will be great. It is distinctly possible that we will get a really good story with her presence, but that will not justify taking almost 2 full seasons of teasing to reveal the Ronnie. What the hell? That's why I keep coming back to the idea I think he's just trolling the audience. That he took the person that at this point we never expect because we were always suspecting, but it never is. And that's the one that he takes 2 full seasons to tease out. Oh, and by the way, the Ronnie did not have fourth wall breaking abilities before. Again, I suspect they'll tie that into the tooth she got and it's like somehow tied to toy maker nonsense. That's the only thing that makes sense. Either that or they just won't address it, which that would be some Chibnall level nonsense. I like to think better of you than that, Russell. You're ticking me off at the moment, but I still like to think you're better than that. I think part of me knew. It might be the Ronnie because how many other options are there? You know, unless they're going to do another gender flip, like they did with the reveal of Missy, also far better handled. Unless they're doing that again, there aren't that many options. And she was being depicted as vaguely sinister, so that gives us villains, even fewer options. Logically, the Ronnie made the most sense, which was why I didn't want it to be that. And here we are. Maybe we'll get good 2-part finale out of all this. It's not impossible. This episode, though, like that final reveal is a mess. And it is truly the least of this episode's problems. This one felt wrong. In a way that just it doesn't quite hit the bottom of the barrel for me the way that, say, Idiot's Lantern does. I still do consider Idiot's Lantern to be the single worst episode of Doctor Who that's ever been made. And I think the reason that this, while the political and storytelling implications of this might actually be worse than the Idiot's Lantern, I think I still consider the Idiot's Lantern worse because there is at least the possibility that the really, really, really poorly handled political aspects of this story were done through carelessness. I'm not saying they necessarily were. Maybe they weren't. But it's at least possible. In The Idiot's Lantern, the closing message of that is literally just an abuse victim should maintain contact with and help support his abuser because they are blood related. That's literally the closing message of The Idiot's Lantern. And there is no possible way to interpret it as being anything other than that. So the blatantness of that horrifying message is probably going to edge out this for still being the worst. But this is now easily in contention of certainly the worst of the modern era. And not because of incompetence the way some of Chibnall's stuff like Battle of Renskorav Kolos was. Which I have gone on record is the single most incompetent script ever handed in for Doctor Who, classic or modern. It's a first draft. And you can tell. But there isn't anything harmful in that. There's some harmful implications by how badly botched this is. Which, yeah, it is more competently written than something like Battle of Renskorav Kolos. But that doesn't help. Again, I keep coming back to Kerblam because Kerblam as a romp was also decently written. It's just his messaging was a disaster. And it really does remind me of this. Comments on this are going to be a nightmare, aren't they? Well, anyways, the Interstellar Stonks. The Interstellar Song Competition. I'm done. I need to lay down. I'm so exhausted. I was exhausted by watching this. I was exhausted by thinking of it. I'm exhausted by talking about it. Whatever your thoughts are about this, keep them respectful, for crying out loud. But drop them down in the comments and let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. But even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. I'd appreciate that, but don't worry too much about it. What I really, really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Quite Bearish, Zubin Lutfula, Mara G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Andre, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Pal Barabajoggle, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. And also Toka Blue Hoovian, Auntie 808, and Tracy Scrabbit. If you'd like to hear me try and pronounce your name correctly while these guys chitter in my ears, check out the reward tiers on the Patreon. Yes, I hear you.